Hello, everyone. We are Geeks, Not Nerds. It's midnight. It's me, Captain Logan. And look, it's also Austin, the Day Ghost.
Ah, the stars are here.
Yep, all the stars and the horseshoes and the blue moons. We got all the cereal pieces. Austin, what are we talking about tonight, sir?
So we are talking about...
What an intro!
We are talking about all the things that we like that ruined everything.
Yeah.
Because we're negative fellas.
Awesome stuff that ruined everything. Things that are some of our favorite things, or maybe in some cases just things that we recognize the brilliance of or the importance of. We're glad in theory initially that it exists, but then the problem is history kept going, and sometimes really good things can have a negative impact on culture for no fault of its own. Mm-hmm. And Austin, why would you say that sometimes a really good thing will happen and then retroactively, years later, you might wish it had never happened?
Because people suck, and that's it.
But it's because people take the wrong lessons sometimes from successes, right? Mm-hmm. Or because they run a good idea into the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
Sort of like last week's topic, I think I've got things on my list anyway that are of kind of different categories of this. Like sometimes it's things that that come out, or inventions that get made, and then people just won't stop repeating that. It becomes too much of a trend, and that's obnoxious. And sometimes the thing itself gets bad. Mm-hmm. Where like it starts great, and then it becomes sort of like sad pale imitation of itself, or it becomes like a perversion of what it was, but it also stays in the culture and keeps messing things up after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of stuff on my list is just, here's this really great thing, and everyone goes, oh, that was so great. Let's not understand why it was great and just make money.
Yeah, and just oversaturate the thing. And the difficulty I had in putting a list together for this, and I mean, I just kept thinking of things all day long. We were gonna do like last week, no more than 10. I've got quite a few that I can grab onto as we're having this discussion. We'll do this like last week, where we'll just kind of haphazardly like bring up things as we go along from each of our lists. But Austin, one of the things that made it kind of difficult to decide what things to put here and what things to leave off is you can make a case for like most things. I was realizing, you could be like, I'm not even sure we should have ever had television.
Oh, I really hope that we just get inventions on yours. Like the television, the radio, noise.
I don't want to give anything away. I have some things like that on my list.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
okay.
could not help myself. But I mean, you look at the nostalgia train that we're on right now, and that we can't stop making things that are nostalgia bait. And we can't, we've had a million conversations, you and I, but also just on the channel in general, going back for years, because I'm an old person now, and I'm getting too close to half my life being on the channel. But we've had a lot of conversations about how we can't stop remaking things and how we don't make enough, original things, and it starts to make you go, I don't know, maybe like certain whole bits of culture were a mistake, or like certain technologies were kind of a mistake. Maybe whole decades were a mistake, Like for a minute we were like, oh cool, the 90s. And then you go, I wish the 90s had never happened. Like
I say that on a daily basis.
You can take this to an absolute absurd degree. Well, you weren't there. I'll never say I wish the 90s hadn't happened. But then there are days.
Your point where it's just color, like color in TV was great, and then it was ruined.
I think that specific colors, like I think pink was a mistake. Maybe we should have never had that.
Magenta's not a natural color, okay? So it's a mistake.
So this is another one of those topics where, in theory, it sounds kind of specific, but it's ultra broad.
Oh, absolutely.
It's insanely broad, but it'll be fun to do anyway. So we're gonna go back and forth. We're gonna throw out some examples examples for you. Pardon me, it's late. I'm gonna make all kinds of grammatical errors. Things that we really like initially. And it'll be interesting, too, to see how many of these things are things that we still like, or if they've been kind of ruined by this phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, not to get too far into the weeds of something close to last week's conversation, because that's kind of what last week's conversation was, right? It was like things that you may not like as much anymore because it got bad. Like, I don't want to get back too far into that, but these are weirdly related topics.
Yeah, they're similar in a way. I don't have anything where it's like, oh, well, this one thing was good, but it ruined the series. Like, all of my stuff when it comes to movies and whatnot, it ruined things around it as opposed to a franchise.
Right.
So I tried my best to keep it away from that because that was last topic.
Well, I have at least one that is that. But okay. Would not, yeah, sure. but would not have been relevant to last week's discussion, because last week was about things that keep going, like more recent versions of a thing, and whether or not
you can do that with endings. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, but what if something never comes back?
Mm-hmm. I didn't think of that. Like, you could have like an ending that you go, oh, I like it, but it kind of ruins the overall journey. I didn't think of it in any way on that level.
Yeah. Okay. I've got one like that.
Interesting.
All right, let's get right into it, and feel free to jump around, talk about any genre of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure this is going to be mostly in the pop culture realm. We'll see what else might come up. There were whole categories where I was like, I really should have something for this, and I can't think of a really great one, and I'm hoping that Austin brings it up. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens where we end up going. And if you're watching live right now, thanks so much for being here. Feel free to throw out your own examples, and we will read them, especially if they happen to be in a super chat. But we'll try to read some regular comments as well if they happen to come up. And thanks for being with us crazy late into the evening. We're going to have to keep doing GNNs as often as we can, because there was a lot of interest last week, and we've got a pretty good crowd for midnight. So thank you guys. Robert, $2 super chat says, in the long run, I'd say Crisis on Infinite Earths. Let's just start with that example. There's a lot of big, popular, kind of gimmicky event things in comics that you can say this about. Now, Crisis for me is not a great book. Like, I like a lot of things about it, but it's real convoluted and kind of problematic as a story in the first place, so I wouldn't have put that on my list. Mm-hmm. But I certainly had that with Death of Superman, which Robert kept bringing up earlier in the chat, where he was like, oh, this conversation is just going to be about Death of Superman, right? So I'll just throw that out right now. Yes, naturally, of course, that is on my list, but it is sort of like Deaths in comics, right? Where, like, that was a big, cool, to me anyway, exciting thing when it happened, and there's a part of me that wishes we'd never done it. Mm-hmm. That's the first place my mind goes. And I can see people having that also with Crisis, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never read Crisis, so I don't know how I feel about it, but I've read Secret Wars, and I like Secret Wars a lot. And they're right around the same time, so...
and Secret Wars could have this a little bit just in, like, at some point we couldn't get away from the mega intra-company crossover event, and that's Marvel's first big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's because I think of it as such an issue later, where it's like, it's hard for me to go straight to the original two with those, where it's like, it's not really until like the 2000s, I think, that it really becomes an issue. So, like, I don't know, it's hard for me to look at it specifically as that, because there's a ton of good events.
That's true, and Robert makes a good point when he says the reason he brought up Crisis is because he says the real issue with that is the constant rebooting. And with DC, that was a thing that was happening before the constant crossover events.
When they keep doing crises
that tend to be about rebooting in some way, which is why it was kind of ironic that when they did New 52 and it was a straight up, except for the things we kept in a bubble, reboot. It was not called Crisis, and Flashpoint was certainly a crisis.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because DC keeps doing different takes on the Crisis thing, and right now with Marvel, they're like reliving every major event from the Quesada era, where we're doing another Secret Invasion, where we did another secret or not secret, Civil War. Um, so it's like they're kind of reliving some of that stuff too, but more broadly.
Yeah. Well, and we are a dog chasing its tail now with events in comics to this insane, absurd degree where we can't stop redoing all of the events like with their names again, just hoping that it's really sad, honestly, what's happened. In the hopes that the name recognition will get a certain number of comic fanboys to buy them again.
We especially have that with Infinity Gauntlet and Secret Wars with Marvel.
Yeah, but this was several years ago now, and of course I'm out of touch with new comics. I'm not really reading anything, but several years ago you had Secret Wars, which brought back almost every single event you'd ever heard of as one of the Battle World side books. And then around the same time, we did the same thing with what is the name of that? I can't think of it now, and I hated it too. It's god awful. But the sort of like almost end of New 52, there was an event that did the same thing where it did a bunch of side books and brought back conversions. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
And it brought back a bunch of old events as 2-part miniseries. And some of those were really obscure. Sorry, we're just running off with ourselves. Some of those were really obscure and weren't even like names of events, but just names of like, story points and things that happened in the 80s and 90s. Like they did a Matrix Supergirl one, and like we can't stop bringing back everything. Yeah.
Okay.
But
that's
yes,
bizarre.
So that's a good example, and Death of Superman is a really obvious example. We don't have to spend a lot of time on that, but I just thought I would tack that in here since he was in comics and big events. But yeah, we can't stop killing characters and pretending like anybody's going to care, even though we're going to bring them back in 6 months. And Superman was a big novelty because we'd never really done that, where like it looked like it might stick. I mean, we had killed characters before, but we hadn't killed anybody as huge as Superman, and and they did it in such a way where people actually bought into the death as a real death. Like they canceled the books for a while. That had never been done.
Yeah, it's weird with Marvel right now because they're doing like death stuff to build up to things that are going to be in movies soon. Like we killed Doctor Strange right before he got another movie. Miss Marvel just died. I heard today that they killed off the Spot. Like, is that just their new?
How cynical is that too? It's like to get people interested, we kill them because
killed off the character. Yeah,
because we know that there was a time where the only time comics would make news is if you killed somebody off, and yeah, that doesn't make news anymore. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Comics just don't make news unless there's a weird controversy now, right?
The death of the Spot.
Yeah. Nobody cares. I didn't know that. Did anybody know the Spot was alive? Like, if you told me he had been dead, I wouldn't have been surprised by that.
Yeah, exactly.
Robert says the constant killing and resurrecting of superheroes is one of my biggest infuriation or irritations, he says, with modern comics. And of course, a lot of people feel that way. I think most people feel that way, but they still tend to get people to notice them, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say. I guess for my first one, I'll throw out a comic book thing since we're in that realm, which is JMS Spider-Man. Which is a run that I think is probably the last good Spider-Man run. Spencer's weird because it's good, but it's also cleanup, so it's kind of hard to judge as a run.
And everybody's going to assume that you're saying that because of One More Day, but the spider totems are also a big problem.
So I'm not even talking about the end of his run. I'm talking about his entire run.
Yeah.
Because JMS Spider-Man is simultaneously great and awful at the same time. And the biggest thing was, and actually, you know what? I didn't write this on my list.
I'm going to go as far as to say I don't know if you even get Spider-Verse without that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so I didn't write this on my list. I just thought of it now, but I always lump them together. I'm gonna put in Grant Morrison Batman in the same thing because I think they're very similar to both characters.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah.
So Spider-Man first, I'll say JMS. The character writing is spot on. It's perfect. The plotting and like everything else is terrible, and we make Spider-Man like way too big, and we do all of the, like you said, the totem stuff. And like Moreland sucks, and we just have all of these really terrible ideas that we kept building on, and that's how we get stuff like Spider-Verse. And I think of Spider-Man as being pretty perfect from the 60s to like the late 80s, maybe early 90s, and then Spider-Man hits the 90s like a brick wall with the Clone the Clone Saga. And the Clone Saga is just bad, but you can kind of wipe it away. Who cares? And then JMS kind of ruins it because we've never been able to get past it, which is also what the Grant Morrison Batman thing is, which is that Grant Morrison Batman I think is fine on its own, but every single person after it is just doing Grant Morrison Batman, and we can never get past the idea that Batman is like the godlike figure, and we can't just have what I want, which is just street level Batman, just solving crimes.
Yeah, I'm gonna risk talking in circles because I brought this point up so many times, but a lot of Morrison things really should have been kind of like Miller in a vacuum, like out of continuity, just their own things. Where it's like, here's a really cool, interesting take on this character, but it breaks the mainline continuity Batman. Not even necessarily because it's against any particular events that happen, but just because the take is not sustainable.
Well, Morrison works best when he's doing like the Justice League Batman. Like,
he works, but I think his X-Men is like that. I mean, I feel like a lot of Morrison stuff is this way.
Oh, okay, interesting. I've never read his X-Men, so
I mean, I haven't read a ton of it, but I have the same thing I do with his Batman, where like I like it. It's not my X-Men. I don't want it to. It's not my Batman. I don't want it to influence everything that comes after it too much, and I don't want you to be stuck with it story wise.
Yeah, no, I think Morrison's Batman is way better without everything that came afterwards. Like if we had just gone back to what Batman was before Morrison after his run, I feel like I would like his Batman run a little bit better. And I like his run. I think it's fine. I haven't read all of it. Like there's like a cutoff. But I've liked what I've read well enough.
Well, his Batman got to kind of the place that Superman was at before Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he's just too powerful. You got to find a way to reel it in.
Yeah, and that's like
that Batman problem is as much of an issue as Superman can juggle planets. We got to reel it in some way. But the problem is, it's much harder to do that with Batman without straight up rebooting. Like you almost want to take Batman and put him in a different time period and do like a period thing. Because part of the problem with Batman too is just modern technology.
Yeah, and that's fair. But it's eventually gotten us to the point of Zdarsky Batman, where he falls out of space in his bat suit, and he's fine.
Yeah, and I haven't read any of that. Partly because you told me about that, and I was like, well, that doesn't sound like fun.
Well, then they did the Batverse thing where Batman goes across the multiverse and he meets like Arkham Batman and 89 Batman, and it's like...
Oh, did they do that?
Yeah, they did that.
Of course they did. Well, you know what? I'll read it anyway for the novelty of it. There might be some fun stuff in there. I don't like that they're doing that. But, on the other hand, I like that better for Batman than I do with Spider-Man on paper. It's just that Batman already kind of popularized it. Like we already did that a lot with things. Like every other episode of Batman Brave the Bold is look at all these Batmans from different universes.
Yeah, that's true.
It just wasn't 89. You know what I mean? It just wasn't other screen.
It wasn't all the stuff you remember.
Okay, so at the risk, I'm afraid that we're risking this being a 2-hour discussion, and I don't have time for that tonight. I gotta get up early, so I'm gonna take us away from comics.
That was my
And
only comic one, so
do I have other comic ones? I don't. I don't guess I do. Okay, well, there's a couple comic things. I didn't talk a lot about Death of Superman, but everybody knows why we put that on the list.
Yeah.
We don't have to spend 10 minutes on all of these. I'm gonna say. So there's a lot of kind of movie archetypes that you can go to with this, right? Like the movie that was great on its own, but then got too popular, and Hollywood could not stop like remaking and let badly influenced stuff. And the first of those I'll bring up is, well, okay, it's for that, but it's also more because of what it did to the grander continuity. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Like, Guardians is wonderful, kind of ruined everything, because without Guardians, you don't have the MCU humor problem as hard as you do. Like,
I thought you were going to go 2. I didn't realize you were going to go with the first one.
No, I'm going to go all the way back, because, and it's not Gunn's fault, it's not that movie's fault, but even before we got to 2, you already had a lot of people complaining, and I think it was warranted. I didn't think it was as bad back then as people were saying, and then it got worse, and then I started to really see what people were talking about, that Marvel started having this problem of, okay, like, comedy is the ticket now, and so we got to start, like, really, forcing humor in at sometimes inappropriate points, and having, like, the intercutting, or the intrusive, like, undercutting a dramatic scene, kind of humor in movies, and without Guardians, you would not get the abominations that are Ragnarok, and sorry, Ragnarok fans, but I hate that movie, and Love and Thunder, and kind of ruined everything. And I think that the Spider-Man movies would probably be better without Guardians if they got made.
So it's hard to say because I don't know where to put the blame, because it's like, I get it with Guardians, but I also think it's a bigger issue with Avengers, and Avengers predates it. So, like, I don't know.
Okay, well, we can kind of put them both there, though, right?
They're both like.
No, yeah. That's true. Avengers is maybe the bigger culprit. I will concede this point. Avengers is probably, because you're right, and I've thought about that, but it's late, and that didn't come to me. So
no, but a lot of people do throw it at Guardians, but I don't know where to put the blame. I think it's between the two of them.
But I would say that where I would meet you on this is Avengers in Whedon's sensibilities are probably more at fault for the thing I was talking about. You're right, for the like kind of intrusive undercutting humor of which actually encroaches into Guardians 2 in a way it wasn't there in the first one. But then Guardians itself is definitely to blame, the popularity of it, for what happened with Thor, because they went,
absolutely,
oh, these movies, nobody's really into these. We don't really know what to do with them. Nobody's got a passion for this. Nobody's got a take. What do we do? I guess we'll make a comedy like Guardians. Like that worked, right? And Waititi did not understand what it was about Guardians that people like, and in his filmmaking too, like how to make a movie like that.
Yeah.
So no, you're right. I am talking about two different things.
When I think one of the things with me, between the two of them is, for example, one of the things I talked about when we did the commentaries is that I think Gunn is really good at going, okay, this is our bad guy. Our bad guy is not funny. Like, you don't make jokes about him that undercut the bad guy. Like, he is scary. While Whedon does not have that at all. Like, both Avengers Whedon films make the villain a complete joke by the end, where like you can't take them seriously. Ultron more so, because Loki is Loki, so it's like whatever, like it fits the character a little bit better.
Yeah.
But by the end of Ultron, where Hulk's like throwing him out of the plane and he's like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me!" It's like, what are we even doing here? Like,
well, and I wonder how much of that with Whedon was, this is like supposed to be fun family fare, because it's not like every project he's ever done is like that. He didn't do that in Serenity at all.
That is true, but I also don't think he's ever been good at writing villains. Like, even when he's not doing that, I think.
But that guy's great.
Generic. I don't know. He never really did anything for me, and I like that movie quite a bit. But that I always thought that villain was just kind of generic.
I don't agree with that at all. I think he's really interesting. So I know it's your turn, but I'm gonna have to throw another one out because we're there anyway.
Okay, go for it.
I did put just Whedon in general here.
I figured you would because I've heard you talk quite a bit about.
It's just the language thing.
Mhm.
Before it's anything, we cannot stop having in everything, and to this day, regardless of the fact that Whedon has been driven out of Hollywood, we've got this unfortunate trend that never went away of everybody, no matter what their age is in movies, speaking as informally as humanly possible and like making up words and stuff. Everybody just turned into children after Whedon.
Well, I've always seen Whedon as another side effect of like the Tarantino thing, where Tarantino comes in and he has a very specific way of like banter and especially like pop culture referencing.
Yeah,
with this character. So I've always seen
that's
Whedon.
interesting.
So I almost have like I go back more and I'm like, okay, it's on Tarantino. Like I like Tarantino a lot, but he ruined everything.
Yeah, maybe so. Well,
also,
and I'm sure you could keep even walking that back farther,
100%.
where you see just like a degeneration of language. But I don't know, man. Just for my generation, there was a period before Buffy where you didn't see as much of that, and then we would not stop doing it after that.
Well, I think it comes down to just our different opinions on it, where you like Whedon a lot and I don't. So
Yeah.
like I see Whedon as the like crap version, where you go, well, I like this guy's writing, but like everybody else didn't understand it. So I think that's just us coming to it from different point of views.
Well, it is and it isn't though, because while we are saying like awesome stuff that ruined everything, you don't have to like Whedon to agree with this point, because I'm talking about influence. And
no, and I agree, but like I said, I've always seen Whedon as being that for Tarantino in a way, where that kind of lining.
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is there were things that were clearly inspired by and ripping off Whedon that did not care about Tarantino and would have never watched those movies. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, especially on television.
No, I get what you're saying. I just mean like I draw the line back more, where like I look at it differently in that way. But
Yeah.
I do agree that
well, then I'll disagree with you on that, because like I think Tarantino might have done that to Whedon and probably did that with certain other people, but I'm telling you, having been there, and I'm a little older than you, that there's this like clear point where after Buffy gets popular, you see a bunch of things start doing this that wouldn't have done that otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I agree. Like I said, I agree that Whedon ruined everything. I just don't agree that he was good.
Yeah, but that's not the argument I was making.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying.
Anyway, what is next on your list?
Okay, the next on my list, I will throw out Scream. I'll throw out Scream. So Scream is, I think, a pretty good movie. I don't think it's amazing or anything. It's kind of baby's first horror movie, but after that, like, everything becomes the meta thing, and I think all of that really sucks. Like, that's when we get like H2O with Halloween and stuff like that, and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And 2000s horror sucks. It's all Scream's fault.
And horror movies that, I mean, Scream's maybe not this way, but and I know horror's always had this problem, but like horror movies that it just does not make any sense whatsoever to have a sequel to, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the idea that you would have I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is the most preposterous.
Well, I think they're
notion.
making another sequel with Freddie Prinze Jr.
Didn't that get a series?
It got an Amazon show.
I couldn't get, like, I haven't seen that. I don't know what they did with it. I couldn't get my mind around a series.
Yeah, because Scream got a show that lasted 3 seasons, and then they announced that.
Before I finally saw it and understood the premise, I used to make fun of the fact that Final Destination had so many sequels, because I was like, the word final is in your title. Then I saw it and I was like, okay, I can kind of see how you'd get sequels now, but
And then you were like, crap, now I have to watch every Final Destination movie because they all have, what's his face? Tony Todd in them.
I oh, that's true. I forgot Tony Todd was in that.
And
I've
John
only seen
Watts is rebooting Final Destination, which is really weird. We'll see
Yeah,
how
I
that.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
I've only seen that first one, and I remember liking it okay, but I haven't seen it in a long time.
they're all kind of the same movie. They're all fine. I think they're fun enough.
So is your sorry, getting back to your to the thing on your list, are are you bringing up Scream because of the problem of like, and I guess like a lot of genres have this now, but just too much like self-awareness?
Yeah, and I think Scream is the type of movie that's more clever the less you've seen. And I like Scream. Like I said, I don't love it, but I do like Scream. Uh, but it has that issue where it's like that constant like meta humor thing, and then it kind of drives the genre for a little while before we get away from that.
Does it make it all too mainstream
Um,
feeling? Like is that part of the problem?
I'm not sure. I think it's more so just after that, like people thought they were more clever than they actually were in writing scripts. Like H2O is a movie that thinks it's really clever, and it's
I was
not
going to say,
in any
yeah.
way.
What are examples of things that it gave us that are unfortunate that are not Scream movies?
So it's pretty much like every slasher after that. Like they all kind of become that sort of like meta sort of thing, and very like wink at the audience. It's almost like
Like
what
subverting the genre where we're not making movies that do the thing that you're subverting anymore, so it's not a subversion.
it becomes like the Austin Powers to James Bond thing. Where
Because I
James
feel like
Bond,
superhero movies have kind of gotten to that place.
where what has sorry?
I feel like sometimes superhero movies have that problem
Hmm. Absolutely,
where
yeah.
like we keep trying to turn things on its head, but we haven't done the thing we're turning on its head, or we've done it a bunch of times, but we're pretending like it's the first time. Like people complained about, and I like Deadpool, but people complain about that with Deadpool, where it was like
Yeah.
you're pretending like this is the first hard edge thing, or like you got generic things like superhero landing, where you're like, what is this 1979? Like,
Well, the big thing with Deadpool is that he's like, "Can you believe it? I'm killing people," and it's like Batman was
yeah,
killing people in '89.
yeah. And every anti-hero movie, sorry, I didn't mean to take it back to superhero, but I'm just
No,
saying
it's
like
okay.
horror is not the only thing that has this.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's just in my wheelhouse. So that's what I go to. But yeah.
it feels like almost every anti-hero movie is too cool for school and thinks that it's the first time that we've had like not heroic heroes.
Well,
It's like,
Black
no,
Adam
it's the
has
opposite.
that really bad.
You know, like it was a novelty when Kick-Ass did it. Everything after that,
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. No,
and it's not even that
Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass was like the very, very first, but it wasn't the trend that it had already become by Suicide Squad.
Mhm. No, and Kick-Ass was like a fun subversion because it's Spider-Man, but it's like that. And Kick-Ass also is not the character that's like the hard anti-hero character.
Yeah,
He's just kind of like dragged
helps.
along through it.
And because it was also subverting a different subgenre of superhero movies. Well, and I say anti-heroes. Like Kick-Ass is not an anti-hero,
Mhm. No, but it is like an anti-hero
it's
kind
that-
of movie.
but it's that hard-edged thing. Yeah, but it's also that subgenre of superheroes in the real world.
Yeah.
And it's
Which
making
is really big in that specific year.
it was, but it's making a comedy out of it.
But that's what the other well, because that's also what Super is too. And I haven't seen.
That's true, but I didn't
Defendor,
know
but
about Super when I saw Kick-Ass. Like I didn't know about that
Yes.
until years and years later. So
Well, Kick-Ass is the better version.
in my brain, that's a newer movie than it is. So I do not think of it in that category, but I should. So I'll get there. I'll get to where I'm. But I also try not to think about that as much as I possibly can because I don't like that movie at all.
Yeah. No, Kick-Ass is the better version of that movie, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly agree with that. No, you're gonna get no argument from me. No, that's. But anyway, that was a terrific example, and I'm not a big horror guy, so it didn't occur to me right away. But of course, naturally, that had to come up. Where do I want to go with this? I have a lot of stuff on my list. I'm gonna say I'm gonna keep it in movies for a second,
Yeah.
and this one's very specific, but I'm gonna say uh, celebrity voiceovers in family animated films, starting with Robin Williams as the genie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That ruined everything. Because, and it's not like that was the first time we had a celebrity voice, but it was the first time that we made as big of a deal out of it in advertising as we did. And like, we just sold it so super hard on that. And Robin Williams famously didn't want them to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he had to have known that he couldn't disappear. Everybody can hear his voice, but he didn't want it to be a star vehicle. And it just was, maybe somewhat despite itself, because he was so popular. And without that, how much longer does it take before you inevitably, because I think it probably was inevitable, but before you inevitably get to the, like, DreamWorks and Illumination thing of wall of people you've heard of to advertise in a trailer, in an animated film.
Well, even like Pixar and Disney, only like a few years later, it really does.
Pixar used to have this, it felt like it had this integrity where they didn't do that. Like, real early on, even when they had big names that you've heard of, it didn't feel like that's how they were selling the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not like we said with the trailers where it's like boom, 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 boom.
But it also felt like they were picking people because they were right for the part more than because you've heard of them. Like, the attitude was definitely different.
Maybe I've always seen it as very similar, where it's like, well, animated movies just have star-studded casts, and maybe that's just because, like, when I was a kid, like, I remember being like,
But go back and look at the first, like, 10 or 12 movies Pixar made, and yeah, they've got stars you've heard of, but sometimes their main character is somebody very small, or a character actor, or like they weren't always huge A-listers, and they didn't go like, we're gonna go try to get, like, whoever the biggest, most major star is in Hollywood right now. And, like, they weren't going after The Rock.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And they were going I mean, think about it. Like, Billy Crystal, like, was not doing anything right then.
Well, he's the Oscars guy.
Yeah, but he wasn't in big movies anymore. Like, how long had it been since he had City Slickers, right? Like...
Yeah, no, that's almost more of like a John Travolta and Pulp Fiction thing, where you kind of dust off somebody that used to be big. That is true. I do think that it is still that kind of taking away from voice actors, which starts with Aladdin, where Aladdin, obviously everybody else is a voice actor, but we slowly edged them all out as time went on, even to the point where we get to Lion King, and it's like most of that cast is celebrities too.
But it gets to a gray area when, I don't mean to just argue with you about everything, but it gets to a bit of a gray area between, like, voice actors that aren't getting work because you're picking, like, high profile big actors, and actors that haven't worked in a long time, so what they can get is voice work. Like, at that point, it's about the same.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Do you mean with Lion King specifically with that?
No, I just mean with Pixar. I'm still fighting you on the Pixar thing, because I don't think what they were doing is the same thing that Illumination is doing now.
I don't know. I look at stuff like Toy Story, and I'm like, most of the actors in that are certainly. There's a ton that are people who are maybe like past their prime, but I don't know. Like I don't have a distinction in my mind with that, and maybe that's just because of how I was raised. Because, like, I remember talking to my mom about that when I was a kid, and she was like, "Yeah, that's what like kids movies are. Like, we always bring in big celebrities, and they come in and they do it." So, like, I don't have that distinction in my brain between what Pixar does and what the other ones do. But
the universe says less voice actors and more character actors. Yeah, but a lot of character actors, when they're not getting work on camera, they're doing voice work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Matt Frewer did a ton of voice work, but he was a character actor. So, like, if Matt Frewer gets a part in a Pixar film, where you're like, oh, that's too big of a name, they should have given it to a voice actor. No, he's also a voice actor, though. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, with Pixar, I think of, like, Tim Allen and Tom Hanks with, like, Toy Story specifically. Like, yes, there are people, like, say, I can't think of what his name is, but Ernest, like basically a character actor at that point is the Slinky Dogs. Like that's a little different.
Well, that was also their first movie. Like after that, they were doing a lot less of that. I feel like you're right. I mean, Tom Hanks is huge in 1995. Like
But then you get stuff like Cars.
I can't
like
argue with
everyone in
that.
Cars is like a big actor, or at
Was he
least like a big celebrity.
Was he at that point?
Owen Wilson?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Owen Wilson is maybe even starting to get past his prime at that point in like 2004, whenever that comes out. But even like I don't know, like
I just couldn't remember as far as the timeline went right then because I wasn't looking at comedies very much at that point.
Yeah, of course.
What else is on your list?
Let's see. What am I gonna?
It's your turn, yeah.
Okay, you brought up the animated movies thing, so I'll go to an animated movie. Okay, these are both kind of linked for different reasons, so I'll just throw both of them out, which is Who Framed Roger Rabbit for the big thing that I'm sure everybody realized when I said that, which is the like 8 billion cameos that all show up and showing off all these different things coming together. And I also put the Lego movie specifically for the brand thing, where like we just make brand movies now, and that sucks. And I also just think like the sense of humor that the Lego movies have is kind of infected a lot of animated stuff. So those are kind of two different ideas, but they're both connected in a way because they're similar kinds of movies. So I thought I'd throw them out at the same time.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't see Lego Movie as influential as like with a lot of other cartoon movies. I have a hard time getting past the Illumination thing, and maybe some of it is just like personal sensibilities, where like I would even if it might make things more irritating, I would rather everything be the Lego Movie than everything be Minions. You know what I mean?
I mean, no, and that's absolutely fair.
The idea of everything being a brand movie, though, I'm trying to think of good examples. I feel like that was happening already.
I don't know about it in the same way, but I'm talking about stuff like we just make movies that are like the brand movie, like Air, for example, where it's just a 2-hour Nike commercial and it's the brand movie, and we're doing like the Hot Cheetos movie. I'm sure it goes farther than the Lego movie. That's just the first thing that comes to my mind, where it's like, okay, we have the brand movie, but it also kind of works. So like that's nice, but like we just keep doing that, and none of it works outside of that.
No, that's true. I'm not sure how much of that is because of that movie, but you're right that that's an example of a thing that is, you know, an odd exception. Mm-hmm. Because I was cynical enough about this when that came out to go, I don't really trust this is just going to be a commercial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm trying to think of other like really major things that were doing that before that. Because that's the other thing is that like something like Lego Movie. I mean, what, 2014?
Yes.
Like that feels like last Tuesday to me. It just doesn't feel like we've had a lot of history since then, even though it's been 9 years.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because I feel like the brand thing is like it's happening more now, but I don't know. But I also separated it from Roger Rabbit because I could also put the blame for the whole like nostalgia, like look, everything's coming back thing at the Lego Movie, because that definitely starts the modern wave of it. I just don't really like that aspect of the Lego Movie, and we'll go back to Roger Rabbit as being the thing that ruined that. So it's
yeah, but it's surprising that, and Robert, I don't know why you said this. He said Space Jam: A New Legacy comes after the Lego Movie. Yeah, I know, but what I'm talking about is the brand thing. I was stuck on that part of it where I'm like, I feel like we did a lot of, I just can't think of good examples. And
I'm sure we
thought we were doing more of that kind of thing before that, but I wasn't talking about the cameo thing. I was just talking about the like brand whatever.
Yeah, that's why I separated them. My thing with Lego movies more of,
you had a ton of that in video games in the 90s when I was growing up, where it's like, you know, Cheetos had to have a video game, and but with the crossover thing, the bazillion cameo thing, yeah, I think more of that actually probably does happen. after the Lego movie. I feel like the crossover thing was getting really popular in video games, and at some point that kind of started to shift its way into other stuff. And comics have a big influence with that too, because like I don't know, this is all kind of homogenized now, right? Where like that when that gets popular with Avengers, with like a bunch of things in the same continuity, now we all blend them together. That was kind of new. Then it got really in vogue to try to, in various media, do the crossover thing with different continuities, which of course those of us that have played video games and read comics forever have been there and done that, but your mainstream movie audience is, that blows their mind. So like all of these things are influencing all of that. One thing we're finding with this conversation is you can't always pinpoint it down to one thing.
Yeah, exactly, because it's weird. It's like Roger Rabbit is the thing that all of this stuff looks back at, but it doesn't influence it until way later.
It wasn't doing it right away. Yeah, exactly.
And it's almost like Roger Rabbit happens and everybody goes, okay, but you can't do that again because it was two companies that came together and nobody had the thought of, okay, but I own like 18 different properties. What if I just do it with all the stuff that I own? And we don't get that until later.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to, and this isn't super old either, but I want to lay some of this at the feet of Ready Player One.
Well, and Ready Player One comes after Lego Movie, and it's part of the same deal that the Lego Movie happens through, because Warner Brothers and Universal, they make a deal like Disney and Warner Brothers did with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that's what gave us the Lego Movie stuff, Ready Player One, and the second Space Jam.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why you get Universal stuff in all of those projects.
Okay. So that's the same company seeing a formula that they're able to bank on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
No, that's a good call. I mean, when you said Roger Rabbit, I wanted to fight you a little bit just because that didn't immediately start happening.
Yeah, because it's weird, right? Because like I said, it's Roger Rabbit. I think every movie that's done it always goes back to Roger Rabbit, where like it feels like they're specifically watching that movie, but that we just didn't make it until like 20 years later, down to the point that the Chippendales movie, I guess, is just a sequel to Roger Rabbit because he's in it, and that movie also crosses over different company animation stuff.
And I haven't seen that, but I don't know if it's a direct sequel in the sense that like there is a Toontown and all of that.
That was the sense that I got, but I haven't seen it.
Blind commentary.
Oh no.
Let's do it. Yeah, but see, I want to because I love making you make that sound.
Well, the best was when the trailer came out.
I love it when I pitch something and Austin's response is, "Oh no," because it doesn't mean no.
That is true. You got me there. But I loved when the trailer for that came out because everyone was like, "Hey, Roger Rabbit," and I was like, "But right after Roger Rabbit is MC Scat Cat, and I care way more that he showed up because who cares about MC Scat Cat but me?"
Deaniver says it didn't happen immediately because getting brands together is hard. It's not if one company owns a bunch of them, though, and that's why it's a little bit surprising that we didn't see more of that through the 90s. Like, there were tiny snippets of it in places where you'd have, like, little shared universes.
Yeah, Looney Tunes Back in Action has that.
Well, and when you say Looney Tunes, I was actually going to say this about the Spielberg cartoon shows in the 90s, where you'd have Tiny Toons and you'd have Animaniacs, and occasionally characters from those things would show up in other shows. If you did that stuff now, you'd just make a movie where they were all together, right? Yeah. And make a big grand deal out of it. That doesn't have anything to do with getting brands together. That's all one brand.
Yeah. It would be like that 80s cartoon where all the different characters come together to fight drugs, and you get like Michelangelo and whoever else was in that. It's like
yes,
Cartoon All-Stars or whatever.
Yep, I saw that in the school.
Maybe it goes back to that.
It had Garfield.
Yeah.
Plushy DX says they couldn't even get Batman and Superman to cross over, which I've never fully understood why it took so long to get that off the ground, but...
Yeah, some of that stuff's real weird. Especially when you find out that, like, there was plans for it, but like it kept not happening. It's like Freddy versus Jason and Alien
But I
versus.
don't know how much of that was because it was a crossover, and how much of it was for the same kinds of reasons that singular characters they had a hard time getting off the ground.
That is true. But like Alien vs Predator and Freddy vs Jason both are like a decade in development hell because they can't figure out how to do it. It's like, I don't know, there's like a weird thing with crossover films.
That's a hump that we seem to have kind of gotten over a little bit because now it's in vogue.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now that
Freddy
we're doing
vs. Jason happens and it makes a ton of money, and Fox immediately goes, just film Alien vs Predator. Do it right now. We need to make this money.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like we could do like a part 2 and probably a part 3 of this, but we're already close to an hour, and I don't want to make this 2-hour show because I cannot stay up that late. So let's each throw out a couple more, unless you want to just kind of blow through your list, because it'll be fun.
If we hit a certain point, I can just blow through it if you want me to, like I did last time.
Okay, let me go ahead and give you briefly the example that I mentioned that gets bad itself and also ruins everything. And obviously, this is all subjective. Not everybody's going to think this is a good thing even in the first place, but I was a giant Lost fan. And Lost both sucked by the end and ruined everything. ABC could not stop greenlighting mystery box shows that were like Lost, and they're still doing it.
But it's not just a TV show thing. Like, Lost ruins everything. Because you have J.J. Abrams and what's-his-face, the writer... Lindelof. That are both like mystery boxes are the way of the future, and then they both spread out and they infect everything.
They infect everything, yeah. Without Lost, Star Trek doesn't happen the way it does, and Star Wars... And you'll always have somebody that'll come in and be like, but J.J. Abrams was not the showrunner of that show. No, he wasn't, but his sensibilities were very much there, and he and Lindelof were on the same page with all of that.
Yeah, we get Star Trek, we get Star Wars, we get Alien, we get Watchmen, which no one will agree with me on, but it ruins everything.
Watchmen is polarizing before anything. I've met other people that hate that like you do, but
no, I just like to joke about it because the people who like really like that show really like it and have no idea where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
But so I play it up a little bit. But anyway.
Well, and I think everyone on the channel that has seen that show likes it besides you. So like you're off on an island. Like DJ and Dan both like it. I think they both like it more than I do, and I like that show.
Dan loves it. Like I think it's one of Dan's just favorite things in the last like decade for the comic book stuff. And he's completely wrong. It's a show made for idiots. But
but you're with me on Lost. That ruined everything.
Yeah, I've never even seen Lost, but it ruined everything.
Okay, throw out another one on yours. I just started watching a show that and it's fine. I'll probably keep watching it for at least a bit, but it started in 2018 and it just finished, I think, and it's called Manifest, and it is literally Lost if instead of the plane crashing on a secret island nobody knew about. What's that?
It said it was a boat?
No, it's still that's called Manifest. It's still a plane. Mm-hmm. But it just disappears for 5.5 years and there's like a time displacement thing. So it's basically like
Infinity War.
It's the aftermath of Infinity War, the show, but starting a year before that movie. Something was in the air, man. And what's crazy is it was 5.5 years. It's like they could have put 5 years later on the screen. It's crazy. But yeah, it's that premise. If you started with the pilot of Lost, they don't land on the island, and then you skip 4 seasons to when some of them come back.
We should make a parody of Lost where a bunch of people are on an island and they crash onto a plane, and then the rest of the show is them on a plane.
They're on an island. You haven't seen the show, so I don't know if you'll appreciate the references I'm going to make here, but they're on an island, right? And there's this really bright white light that happens, and then suddenly they're on a plane, and everybody's like, why are we on this plane?
Yeah, exactly.
And they find out that the island crashed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they'll be like, oh my god, look out of the windows. There's a cloud monster.
Yeah, and then it sounds like a broken machine for no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the smoke monster sounds like it's got like chains and a motor. I've never understood that. Anyway,
What's the fog machine?
oh, yeah, that's probably what it is. Well, no, because it's all CG. Austin, what is another thing on your list, sir?
Okay, I'm gonna go with 21 Jump Street, which is a comedy movie that I like a lot, and I've covered like half of Lord and Miller's filmography at this point by throwing that out there. But uh, that is like the first place that I can think of where we do like the really self-aware like reboot thing, which works really well for that movie. That movie's really funny.
And I've never seen that.
And you should. It's awesome. I think
the only thing I know about that movie is it almost crossed with Men in Black.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense unless you've seen the ending of the second one, which is a movie I don't like that much, but people like more than the first one.
Does it go to an alien's place?
No, the ending of that movie is okay. So 22 Jump Street, the entire joke, and it's why I don't really like it over the first one, is that it's like an 80s sequel where it's just the same movie again. Where like that's just the joke. Where like beat for beat, it's the same movie.
Okay.
And then you hit the credits and it's a montage of just the franchise where it's like 23 Jump Street, 24 Jump Street, and it's like 26 Jump Street military school, and it's like them in military school, and then it's like, I don't know, boating school, and they're undercover in boating school. And it's like all this different stuff. So it's like, if you went with that premise where like it's just the joke is they cross over with all this other stuff, I think the Men in Black thing makes a ton of sense.
Okay.
But anyways, I think a lot of soft reboot stuff. I think at this point most soft reboots are at least self-aware to some degree.
So you put two Lord and Miller movies on your list.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And while I can't watch it, I think there's probably an argument to be made for Spider-Verse for multiverse and superhero. So really you could put their entire filmography on.
Yeah, I actually almost put that on my list and I just forgot to, but I was
questioned if it would be. I wondered.
It's premature. It's only been 5 years, and I want to say that actually less for multiverse, although that's in there, but more for art design. But we haven't had enough examples yet. But I think in the next 5 years we will.
Mm-hmm. Because we're only just starting to get it.
Yeah. But like Ninja Turtles has already done it. It's not exactly the same thing. I mean,
and
like,
Puss in Boots just did, and there's another one that came out last year, I think, that does that. And you're right, it's not the exact same thing, but it's clearly influenced by it.
It's influenced by it. Mm-hmm. Robert Wilde says, "What about Smallville?" Yeah, I mean that's definitely influencing a lot of like teen drama things that come after it. I don't know.
I don't know enough about that genre to see like how much it affected it.
Yeah,
because it's not like it really affects the superhero genre because it's so disconnected.
Yeah, well, you can complain and like there's pockets, and we haven't really talked about this aspect, but this topic, there are pockets where something will come out, and I think we even talked about this last week a little bit. Something new will become really popular for a property, and then we can't get away from it. So even if it's good, you may not necessarily want it to be everything we do after that. And there's a few things with Superman that we keep doing after Smallville that might irritate people. So like I could see somebody saying Smallville ruined everything in Superman. You know, ruined some things in Superman.
Mm-hmm. Well, with Superman it's hard to say because you have the triple beat of Superman Returns, Smallville, and Man of Steel. So it's like there's no real good like just traditional Superman on film for like 20 years. More than that, because it's Superman 4 is the last one.
That's true. But you could complain if people buy the argument anyway that character gets too conflicted and too angsty after Smallville because we had to do the reimagining thing with it.
Mm. Yeah, possibly. It's hard to say. Because I don't know how much Smallville impacts those movies. Like, not to, like, undersell Smallville, but, like, I don't see that as something
I don't totally know either. We keep referencing it.
Yeah,
So
but
people are looking at it. Like we can't stop casting alum from it, and like there, Man of Steel has a number of Smallville references, but it's hard to say
okay.
how it's hard to say how much that's influencing the actual storytelling.
Yeah,
Uh,
'cause that's not the type of thing I would imagine that either Snyder or Goyer would like. So it's,
yeah,
but I didn't even realize they went that far with it. And then, like, I don't know, Superman Returns is so narrowly focused on Donner that it's hard to see Singer looking at anything else.
Robert Wild says Smallville had a huge influence on television. Yeah, I hesitate with that. Now that was a really like shockingly big show, especially for that network. So like I think the biggest impact that Smallville had was in pushing the envelope actually of like CG effects and stuff on TV. There's a lot of things that it was attempting, whether you thought it looked okay or not, that we were just too scared to do back then. So like that was the biggest effect that it had. As far as like the way teen dramas were written and stuff like that, I think one of the effects it definitely had was taking things in more of a horror direction.
Yeah, it kind of bringing that X-Files
The X-Files thing.
feel to stuff. Yeah.
And I still say a lot of that with that show just had to do with how much X-Files alum was in the was on the crew.
Oh, okay.
That has I bring this up all the time, but that's what is it? Mark Snow, the composer for that show is the X-Files composer.
Interesting.
And they shoot in Vancouver in the same place, and I'm sure there's other crew people from that show that run Smallville.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But Robert Wild says, my point was just that we get the entire Arrowverse because of Smallville, which got progressively terrible. Yeah, but it started off a lot better than Smallville in my mind. So that's a place where, that is the other reason that I hesitated, where like, I don't know that I look at Smallville and go, this was great, and then and then it ruined everything because a bunch of really bad things happened after it. That's more complicated to me, because Smallville, first of all, gets really terrible, and I have a love-hate relationship with it in the first place. And I think Arrow starts really solid, and if only it had stayed the course, it would have been fine. And I think Flash is very much the same way. But then, like, those getting so awful and not being able to keep track of their continuities at all as quickly as that happens, and just being so ham-fisted, and also being so like politically pandery and all of that stuff. How much of that has to do with Smallville, and how much of it is the sensibilities of the people that made those in the first place? Like, yes, they don't happen without the popularity of Smallville, but that's kind of where it begins and ends to me, I think. Like,
I'm gonna draw the line back further, and I'm gonna put it all on Batman Begins, because that show was supposed to be a Bruce Wayne travel show, and then there was development for that as a movie, and they went, nah, we'll do Superman instead.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put it all on Batman Begins.
But that's not going back further. Begins doesn't come out till 2005, but they were just already kicking around something like it.
Around, yeah, but it became Batman Begins, so
did.
it's not like I can be like, I blame this theory.
That's true.
Of Batman.
That's fair.
But also, you could say it with Batman Begins in terms of the reboot thing, though, because especially the dark reboot thing, because we were doing that a lot after Begins. Not all of it's bad.
I've brought this. Yeah, that's the thing is, at some point you just start talking about interesting trends, not necessarily ruining everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost want to say this. This is going to sound so weird, and I don't even know that this is why that happens. So I guess I'm not sure I want to bring this up. I almost said. For like reboots and superhero in particular, I almost want to say that like Amazing Spider-Man set a weird precedent, because that was so soon after the last iteration, and that had never happened before, and we kept doing that with stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could go to that, or you could go to the MCU Spider-Man with that, because we get him in Civil War. the exact amount of time it would have been between Amazing 2 and Amazing 3.
Yeah, that's true. I did have Nolan's Batman on my list specifically for music. Zimmer ruined everything.
Nolan and Zimmer ruined everything, especially trailers.
That's true.
So
But like every like half dark action movie sounded like Begins in Dark Knight for years. We're only just now starting to get away from it a little bit. It feels like to me.
I watched the trailers for Tenet and Oppenheimer with Nolan, and I'm like, I don't get anything out of either of these because they're just Nolan trailers. Like it's they look like Nolan movies. He's got a formula for his trailers.
John Ty put in a $5 super chat and says, would you agree with some that Watchmen/Dark Knight Returns ruined comics because of the hype of deconstructing superheroes? That's on my list. That is on my list. And what I said specifically was, I say specifically, more broadly, Miller and Alan Moore. And I think Moore would kind of agree with you.
I think Moore definitely would. It's hard to say because I think it's way more complicated than that.
It is.
Because there's so much good stuff. We hit a point where it dries up, as opposed to it just being like we did this thing and then everything sucked after that.
Yeah, but no, you're right. You can't help but be hyperbolic with some of this, but you have sort of it
puts the nail in.
Well, I think what you have is like a fork in the road, where you have a lot of comics as a genre for adults improves massively when that happens. Superhero as an escapist genre for children and people that don't want that gets way sidetracked by it. Mm-hmm. So you can say it ruins a bunch of stuff at the same time as it improves a bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, it's really complicated.
You have to lose your innocence in order for that to get more sophisticated, but then you don't want it to lose its innocence, but then you don't want everything to be a Saturday morning cartoon, but then it doesn't have to be. But you know what I mean? It's like, no, it's very complicated.
I mean, a go-to as like a perfect representation of this is Daredevil, right? Because Daredevil, at a certain point, because of Miller, goes off and becomes what we think of as being Daredevil, and it completely loses the kind of silly Stan Lee era thing. And like the run that I find is the most controversial that people talk about is Wade, which brings more of that Lee stuff back to it. So like there's almost like a microcosm of that entire thing in Daredevil.
Yes, that is all super complicated.
Yeah.
Let's rattle some things off.
Oh, there was also another super chat before. Oh no, sorry. Was the one about Smallville?
No,
sorry.
I got all that. Thanks, man. No, you're fine. The MCU ruined everything for lots of reasons, but the big one is shared universes. We just can't stop trying them, and they almost always fall apart and don't work. And there are projects that probably would have been better if they weren't manufactured to try to force a shared universe to come into existence.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I could not help but put that on my list.
No, that's absolutely a thing, and everybody's trying to do it. And there's like two other ones that have ever made money. One of them's debatable, which is the Godzilla King Kong stuff.
I was gonna say I'm not even sure how much money that's making.
Yeah.
Versus its budgets and advertising and.
Well, and the second Godzilla movie bombed, but then Godzilla vs. Kong did well enough that they were willing to continue, because that was kind of the movie where it was like, it's either done here or we keep going, depending on how well it does.
Yeah. Well, and how well did Skull Island do?
Skull Island does pretty well, I think. It's just the second Godzilla that bombed. But that also, to be fair to it, it's like a movie that's very niche, but also it comes out in like a really packed month, because that's like around when Infinity War comes out, and I think like Deadpool 2, like it's around like there, because that's also around when Solo bombed.
Deadpool probably ruined everything.
Yeah.
Ben Script Super put in a $5 super chat and just says happy to see GNN. Thanks, man. Yeah, we brought it back last week, and we had a fun idea for tonight, so we decided to do another one. And we're not promising how often we're gonna come in and do these conversations. We also keep thinking of them.
Basically, what you're saying is that GNN ruined everything.
GNN did kind of ruin everything, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we are past an hour and we still want to do rants, so why don't you rattle some stuff off and then I'll rattle some things off.
Okay, so I have Halloween 2018 on here because we're doing that reboot thing before then, but that's mainly on horror because we keep doing the Halloween 2018 formula specifically with like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We did
but like Terminator tried it.
Terminator tries it. We did it with Leprechaun.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the same year. So they greenlight Halloween, and the people who have Leprechaun go, okay, that is clearly going to make money. Let's greenlight it now so we can have it right after. And there's like something else. Oh, Scream comes back because of that. So it kind of does.
Does that movie ignore certain movies but keeps the other ones though? Does it do that whole thing?
Not specifically, but like it's still following that kind of formula. But the Scream movies have never really rebooted in that way.
Because, so what do you mean when you say that formula then? Because I thought what we were talking about was specifically you keep the movies you think work, but you ignore everything else in the continuity.
So that's definitely part of it. I wasn't thinking of it so much in that way, but that is more so.
Because if you're talking about like just decades later sequels, what's really funny is H2O did it before that did it, and then it does it 20 years later again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and this is the kind of thing that makes me feel like I've lived too long.
Well, get ready for H6O, where we get the 60th anniversary. And it's Michael Myers attacking the old age home that Laurie lives in.
Laurie's like a cyborg now.
Oh my god! Okay, these are both Universal properties. What if we get Cyborg Laurie and Cyborg whoever Samuel L. Jackson played in Jurassic Park?
Yeah,
and they fight Dinosaur Michael Myers.
Yeah, I'm here for it. But that is clearly a movie written by an AI. Like
that is the first Chat GPT movie.
It is, absolutely. Okay, what else is on your list?
So I wrote this. This is like weirdly specific, but I wrote Pirates of the Caribbean down for just how many times Disney kept trying to do roller coaster movies.
Yeah.
And none of them worked except for that.
Well, and not just roller coaster movies, but just theme park movies.
Well, that's what I meant. Like I said roller coaster, but I meant theme park. And we're remaking...
Well, I just said that because, like, Tomorrowland is not a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm. Well, and neither is Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, but they're at least rides.
Yeah. Well,
Tomorrowland was a whole area of a park. It's not a ride.
That is true. But they're remaking Haunted Mansion.
I still love that movie. I don't care what anybody says. Although I only saw it the one time, so I don't know if it holds up. But
although you can say that ruined Brad Bird's career.
Yeah. I don't know why I liked that movie. But...
He almost did Star Wars. He turned it down for that. It's sad.
Okay, since you said that, let me throw out a really specific one too.
Yeah.
Because this one's silly. So we can have a whole conversation about how Harry Potter ruined everything. So like that's just kind of obvious. So I don't feel the need to go there. But more specifically with the movies, Harry Potter started that stupid trend of
splitting the last one.
You've got a franchise that we've milked forever, and we got to figure out how to get one more movie out of it. And so you split the last one into 2 or more parts. And Harry Potter did it, and then friggin' Twilight had to do it, and then Hunger Games did it. Like everything's doing that.
Yeah, the only one that I will stand by, it didn't work, but I can understand why you would do it, is The Hobbit.
Yeah.
But it didn't really work.
But it didn't actually work out, yeah.
Yeah, but I can understand why you would split that.
And I feel like that one is slightly different because, I mean, it is retroactively a franchise that you've milked forever, but it's kind of more just forcing it into a trilogy, which almost puts it in a different category.
Well, The Hobbit's weird because it's 2 movies and then like right. It's like in production of 2. Like after the first films come out, they go, we're splitting the second one into 2.
Yeah, but that
so,
feels more like we have to make a thing into a trilogy before it feels like the Harry Potter thing, because that was 7 movies. Let's get one more out of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is true.
It's a little different.
That did start as 2 movies.
But no, I know it did.
But yeah, I agree. I hate that trend.
But you also could look at it the other way and go, but Lord of the Rings was 3 movies, and so, you know, even though they're going backwards, they're like, how do we get one more? So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, anyway, what else is on your list?
This one's like very specific me, and you're not gonna care. But
Okay.
I put Adventure Time, which is a show that ruined all of kids' animation.
No, I actually thought of that, and the only reason
okay.
I didn't do it is because I never saw that show, but I felt that when it happened.
So because that's like around when I'm like starting to get out of that stuff. But I have younger siblings, like I watch it, and Adventure Time is really funny. Like I think that's a really good show. But it ruined everything.
No, I felt like right after that you could just see a difference in styles and in like more and more shows that just didn't make any kind of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that show, so it's not fair for me to complain about it. Well, and also I can't say a great thing because I've never seen it.
Yeah,
so I don't know. But it did feel like it
really
ruined everything.
It ruined everything.
Okay, well, I'll go to a thing like that where it's specific to me and you won't care. Powerpuff Girls merchandise.
Okay. That's like my sister the one day goes, I hate A&W. And I was like, why? And she was like, they're marketing. I hate that you can buy their root beer in a grocery store. And I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What are you talking about?
This might be more just for specifically what it did to that franchise, but I think it kind of affected advertising and merchandising in general. What Powerpuff Girls did was it was a super popular show that made prissy cutesy merchandise that made the whole world that didn't watch that show think it was a different show than what it was. And then when they tried to bring it back, they made the show that everybody thought it was when they looked at that merchandise. And I feel like that was detrimental to just like merchandising for kid shows and stuff. And also that was something of a late example of this, but it did kind of help keep this trend going after Batman and stuff. Like something gets too popular and it's got to have a piece of merchandise for freaking anything you've ever heard of, or like anything you might buy. But yeah, the world was different after that. It really was. That's all I know.
I just saw Plushy DX just said people hated Simpsons and Minions for that. I don't know what he's responding to, but I want to know why those two things.
How you were able to put those two things together?
Yeah.
Well, and of course we can make a case for the Simpsons ruining, adult animation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that is true because they all just become copies of the Simpsons, and then they all become copies of Family Guy.
Yeah, and then The Simpsons becomes a copy of all the things that are copying it at some point.
And then Futurama has this, not in everything copied it, but it was like a very specific feel, and then it left, and nobody's ever filled that hole.
I'll throw out a couple things just very quickly. The Matrix is obvious. Just visually on film for a good period of time, it ruined everything. We couldn't stop trying to make everything look like that movie. John Wick is kind of doing that to us right now, or more just in every action movie wants to be the next John Wick. So like I put that on my list because it's doing that.
John Wick has it in that there's like 8 billion knockoff John Wicks that are coming out now.
Yep. And then just whole categories of things that I put on my list. Streaming television. It was a good idea for a minute. I was very excited about it. Ruined everything. It's the reason there's a writer's strike right now. You might not be able to make money in that industry because streaming television happened. And I also put that on my list. I'll say this real quick because one of the things I was really praising TV shows for that were on Netflix and a couple other services when all of this started was, you don't have to worry about like getting canceled prematurely because you can like make a whole season of a thing, or you can even, make a season and then get started on the next thing, and you're not going to get canceled over like not enough people, watching on television and stuff. And I think a lot of people thought that early on that it was going to be based on kind of a different model, and no, that didn't end up working out. And you still can and are likely to get canceled after just a season or two on a streaming service. And more than that, it just seemed like the storytelling would be better with that model, and then you had this phenomenon of the first season is great and everything after that falls off and sucks. And I don't know. That was just really sad and unfortunate. And it's hard not to kind of look back on it and think that maybe it would have been nicer if we could have somehow kept everything broadcast and then just be able to look at it later on demand and just make shorter seasons in the first place. Like a hybrid of the two things would have been a lot better, it turns out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Robert Wild in the chat said, I'd rather have a million John Wick ripoffs than more shaky cam movies. The issue is that a lot of the John Wick ripoffs are with people who can't do action, so you can get a hybrid of them.
Yeah. You'll probably get crappy shaky cam in those.
Yeah, or you get like,
I don't know.
They also mentioned Bullet Train. A lot of that, but Bullet Train is a lot of like crappy CGI like nonsense as well. That and Bullet Train really thinks it's Tarantino.
Well, and I haven't seen that, but I don't know if it counts when it's made by some of the same people that do that, because I think Bullet Train was directed by one of the choreographers.
It's David Leitch, who's like the co-director of the first John Wick, and then he's a producer on the sequels. But he also does like Atomic Blonde, which also fits into that category. So that it's like a weird gray area, but I think it still counts. But yeah, streaming television ruins everything because they decided that spinning your wheels is a style.
Yeah, and just like really slow pacing, standing in for deliberate pacing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And I also included online gaming and the internet.
Okay, I have one that goes into online gaming, which is I put the Friday the 13th game, and I'm a giant hypocrite because I keep buying them and I keep enjoying them, but I hate that like every 80s video game now is just the like online multiplayer thing. Like, it's so lame. Make something else, please. And I didn't play Ghostbusters because I'm sick of it, and I need to finally stop buying them. I don't know if I'll play Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They're making a new Friday the 13th game. It just came out today. I hope it's a single-player thing, because we need to get away from that. Don't make another online game.
Yeah, we just need variety is all.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm so excited for that RoboCop game. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I really want to play that if I ever get a PS5.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have other things on your list?
I think Friday the 13th was the last thing.
I've been jumping around a lot.
I have one more, but it's like so specific and stupid that I'm like, it's not a big deal. I don't need to say it.
I think I've hit everything I wanted to hit.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing I'll mention real quick is since we're at video games, and I know you'll agree with this, but like the Arkham franchise a little bit, and you could say this, I guess, about a lot of games that kind of spearhead genres or subgenres. Like, you could kind of say, like, anything that has a bunch of clones it's like, we had a long, maybe we're still doing it. I'm not
I can't
playing
believe
a
I
lot
forgot
now.
to put that on my list.
But we had this with God of War with hack and slashes where like we just
Yeah.
could not get away from God of War. But like, does it mean you didn't want God of War to
Well,
ever happen?
God of War ruined video games twice.
Yeah.
Because you get the hack and slash thing, and I mean, the original three God of Wars are kind of like your McDonald's to the like Devil May Cry's like fancy restaurant.
Which is why
But,
I
like,
like them, because I can play
yeah,
them.
but yeah, it's fun
Because they're
Like,
not because they're not that hard.
and then they go, you know what? Let's take the franchise that was made for edgy 13-year-olds, and like that's the main demographic, and let's pretend that we're sophisticated now, and then it becomes like walking simulator with worse fighting combat, and then that's become just Sony's entire thing now, where every game is just that. Like that's what The Last of Us is too, where it's like, look how smart and sophisticated we are, and it's like, no, you just really want to be a movie, but you're Sony and your film department sucks, so you're stuck at video games.
Yeah, and I haven't played past the first hour of that, so I can't say whether or not I'm cool with that kind of gameplay. But I've liked I've liked stuff that's more in the mode of like kind of a choose your own adventure thing, where it's sort of a game but it's sort of a movie. So like, I like the Telltale thing. I sometimes wish there was a little bit more that you had to do and it wasn't, so much busy work. But like if the story is good, it's kind of fun to play those. And I really like Detroit Become Human. So like I'm okay with more of that kind of stuff if there's a lot of like ethical choice and stuff. But if it's something that's, like you said, just sort of walking simulator and then you do a quick time event, like if there's not a lot of different paths, then that's not as interesting
the last God
to
of
me.
War, there was like the sequel to the new series.
Yeah.
It's like walk for an hour and then you hit a puzzle and the character you're with is like, look, there's the solution. Playtesters couldn't figure it out. So like, there it is. There you go. We don't trust you're smart enough to figure out our puzzle. There you go. But with the Arkham thing, combat specifically,
Yeah, that's
they
the reason I
ruined
brought that up.
superhero games, and it makes me sad because superhero games used to be like, hey, let's take a character and okay, this is what they do. How do we make that into a game? And now
then you would innovate based on a power set.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, we're doing Spider-Man. How do we put Arkham onto Spider-Man? And it's like, I don't know, I'm Spider-Man. Like, do I really need to do the like Batman vault over a guy with a shield? Like, I'm Spider-Man. Like, you can do something else. Like, and Avengers has that really bad where like you have to do that when you're the Hulk.
Well, and the big thing I had with Spider-Man was just too many Predator missions.
Yeah. No, and
that seemed like so much more of a Batman thing. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of sneaking up on people that you would do with Spider-Man, but
I feel like the stealth thing in Spider-Man games only happens after Arkham. Like, there's no stealth in any Spider-Man game, and then Arkham happens, and then it's like, boom, they all have the exact same stealth mechanics.
Okay, so I really have to get going. Like, yeah. we're running up way too close to the time I said I can't stay up. So let's go ahead and do rants very briefly. And Austin, would you like to start?
Okay, yeah. So I have a rant of something that I figured out last night, and I was very annoyed. So
that's the point of a rant.
Exactly. So a new Transformers is coming out on tomorrow. Technically today, it's past midnight. And I thought to myself, hey, I've never watched Beast Wars, and that's what they're looking at for this new movie. I will go and look at it. So I go to Amazon and I look up Transformers complete set, because I'm like, you know what, like I'll look into other shows because there's a few shows I haven't seen and I'll take a look at them. Beast Wars is not in circulation like in anything. And I'm like, you have a brand new movie that's coming out.
That.
How do you not have like at least a new DVD, or just being like, hey, you can buy this, go online, it's available everywhere. And then I thought, oh, but this isn't just a Beast Wars issue. This keeps happening to me. Like, the Peacemaker show happens, and I go, ooh, I like this. I'm gonna go read some Peacemaker. Not available anywhere. Blue Beetle's coming out soon. I want to go and read old Blue Beetle. Nothing with Ted Kord is available. Indiana Jones is coming out. Oh, I would like to read some of the Indiana Jones comics. None of that's available. So, like, I don't know. I am a consumer. Give me product I can consume, please.
And you can't be the only one
No,
that's
I'm
looking
sure
for
I'm
these
not.
things.
Yeah,
Especially with Beast Wars.
especially with
Like some of the
these
other
things.
stuff you're talking about is either more obscure or
It's
like
more niche.
no one's gonna care to try to find Blue Beetle comics with Blue Beetle coming out because 9 people will see that movie, and
Yeah, exactly.
you all know I'm right about this. But with Beast Wars, like I had that thought when it was coming out. I was like, I haven't seen this since it was on.
Yeah, so then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm screwed. Then I go on YouTube, and like every Transformers show is just on YouTube and like restored by just people. And I'm like, well, that's nice. I can at least watch it like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why the people who own it can't be like, hey, we're making a Beast Wars thing. Let's make sure that people can see Beast Wars.
Yeah, I mean, even if they don't want to put it on physical media because that's not selling as well anymore, like at least
Put it
put
on
it on
Paramount Plus.
But at least put it on Paramount. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, no, exactly. But like none of the TV shows are on there.
John
It's
Tice says
ridiculous.
the official Transformers YouTube channel has it, and if that's the case, then that counts because, like that's what Hasbro's been doing with Power Rangers.
Okay.
Like,
See, I just found it on just like somebody's channel, so
they just put it all on their official YouTube channel, and it's the same transfers that we had on Netflix, but it's free now. So I mean,
Yeah.
I guess it does kind of suck if you're not paying for premium because you have to deal with ads. But I pay for premium, so I haven't minded when shows do that.
yeah, no, I've got premium too. But I don't know, it's still annoying. Like I would like to buy some of that stuff. Like
Yeah.
why is it so difficult? Like
Well, and that kind of thing sucks for collectors, obviously. Like,
yeah.
it's a nightmare for Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, and I was shocked there's no complete series set for Prime.
Because of 03, which is weird because that show is all on Prime now, but on Paramount Plus now, but they still have never released all of it in one easy package. I'm talking about the 03 series for Ninja Turtles. But then 87, contrastly, you can get the discs easily, but they've never had that streaming. I don't really understand that.
So annoying.
Yeah.
That's my rant. I'm probably gonna go watch Beast Wars after this because I can watch it on YouTube.
That's a solid rant, man. Okay, I've got 3 words for my rant, and it's 2-step verification. Oh, it's driving me crazy with multiple accounts. So not too long ago, my YouTube channel got hacked, and we didn't know if Geekvolution was going to be able to continue. And it was all because of YouTube's new 2-step verification, because if you get hacked, and even if you have that set up, the hacker bot, mine was a bot, it wasn't a person. It was a Russian bot. And it managed to get into my account. I've talked about this at length in the Captain Logan show, so I won't talk about this too long, because I'm not just talking about YouTube anymore. I have to talk about another thing now. It got into my account, and it changed my codes for 2-step verification. So even though I had that set up, it didn't help me, and in fact made it a lot worse than it would have been if this happened prior to 2-step verification being a thing, because you can reset your password, but if you can't back it up with 2-step verification, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to use it. And you can't just get a code sent to your email or to your phone or something, because you have to be able to prove with the code that comes with 2-step verification. And the bot changed that. Okay, so the same thing just happened to me with Sony, with PlayStation. I hadn't used my PS4 in months. I've just been doing other things that haven't gotten to it, and I finally got it out. My kids wanted to play Spider-Man on PS4, and I couldn't sign in because of the two-step verification thing. So all this seems to do is lock people out of their own accounts, which is a huge problem. Because what used to happen if you get hacked is you get your password changed, and then whatever damage happened in your account was done, but then whatever hacked in couldn't get back in because they didn't have your password. And I guess, bots have been able to get more and more around that. So, I don't know what the solution is. It's possible that, of course, you would just keep dealing with that. But the two-step verification thing, in my case, has been making it worse because I just don't have any way to get back into my account at all. So, the only thing you can do is call whatever company owns the service and hope to God that you can get through to a person that can fix all this for you in the back end, which is what I'm going to have to do with Sony now. And I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I'm going to have to call a number and hope to God I can get a person on the phone. And if not, I'm going to have to set up a new account and rebuy anything I had digitally. It was a worse issue for YouTube because it's, my job. But with this, it sucks because most of my games I have on disc, but DLC you gotta rebuy. I had a subscription because I accidentally bought it again for PS Now. I can't use that right now. So anyway, yeah. So that sucks, and I'm afraid it's just gonna keep happening with accounts that I have.
Okay,
because I had some kind of a data breach or something.
First of all, bots hack you. Why is the only thing that can help you also bots? But then at the same time,
right?
Sony, you make so much money from your stupid walking simulators. Pay people to operate your phones.
Well, you say that. I haven't tried to call the number yet.
Yeah,
I found the number. It's not hard to get. Maybe
I'm
they
sure
have.
they're easier to work with than YouTube.
Yeah. Maybe they have great customer service. I can't complain about that yet. I haven't dealt with it.
Yeah. Okay.
But I did. But before I found out they had a number, I was dealing with a bot that just kept taking me in circles, and that was irritating.
Okay, then I'll change it to Google. You're literally a monopoly. Pay people to operate your phones.
Yeah.
No one uses Bing.
Literally no one except for Brandon Grimm.
Except for Brandon. And he doesn't use it for normal searches because he uses Google.
Anyway, that's my rant. I gotta go to bed.
Good night, everybody.
Everybody, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and we'll be back with you again in the not-too-distant future with another one. Like I said, I'm not promising how often GNN is happening, but Austin and I keep coming up with topics, so
yep,
we'll be back with another one soon.
If you film it, they will come.
Tomorrow night, Captain Logan Show at 7 o'clock Central. Hope to see you there. After dark for patrons right after that. And then I'm out of town this weekend, so Austin and I aren't going to have a show on Friday. But he and I are going to try to do a rewind commentary next week sometime, probably Thursday after the Captain Logan Show. And then, Counting Crypto Freaks, the 24-hour stream comes back next Friday night into Saturday for Season 3. So John and I will be watching the entire season overnight into the afternoon and evening, like we have been doing with that show. And it's been a ton of fun, and we weren't able to do one last month, so I'm glad we're finally getting back to it. We will see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, the Day Ghost. Wait, was that you? What is your other form? What were you turning into, a mini fridge?
The hand movements that's what Optimus Prime does in G1, but I'm not a truck, so
I was like, what are you turning into? I'm gonna say mini fridge.
Yeah, I turned into an Xbox Series X.
You turned into an Xbox mini fridge. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Xbox has a mini fridge?
Because everybody called the Series X a fridge, and then they have no self-awareness, so they just released a fridge.
They made a fridge. Okay. Good night, everybody. Bye, folks.
See ya.